Okay, so a couple of quick things before we get started. It looks like there's still a lot of people that don't know what is going on with the presentation. So I'm going to show it one more time just so everyone understands. We do have presentations that we're supposed to start today, okay? Um, or they were supposed to start yesterday actually, but no one signed up. So there is enough space, but everyone needs to be signing up for the next few days that are on the schedule. They should be completely full. Okay, so as far as what's going on, um, if you don't know that we have a paper in the class, then I don't know where you've been. I've been mentioning that since the beginning of the semester. There is a paper and presentation due. So the paper is due at the end of the semester, but we do have an oral presentation that I need to schedule for everybody, and that's going to be over Zoom, right? So oral presentation is going to be about 15% of the total grade. Again, I'm offering extra credit on this. I wasn't going to tell anybody, but there is an extra credit um, offered for the oral presentation. Okay. You are allowed to have a visual aid. So you're allowed to have a PowerPoint like I share with you um, for lecture, right? You can have about 5 slides, maybe if that, if you need it. If not, you can do it totally verbal. You can perform the oral presentation totally verbal. Okay. And I'll grade you. And the oral presentation is just going to be on the paper itself, okay? And the paper is short, it's about 1,500 words, um, and it's going to be on anything from any topic in science, okay? I would, I think there's a few lectures where right before the lecture, I showed you uh, IFL Science. It's a website for ideas on what your paper should be on, right? There's a lot of things from fossil record to vaccines to viruses to I mean random things in science. Okay, and they're very cool, right? It's a massive computer chip could process simulations faster than real time, right? So there's a lot of very interesting little stories here that you can pick from. Okay, um, right here's stuff on global warming and carbon dioxide levels. Um, a lot of very, can give you hints to very cool topics in science. Okay, so I wanted you to pick one and then run with it, write an essay on it. Okay, and I wanted it to be backed by some research in science. Okay, so the directions and information's here. If you didn't know, now you know. You should definitely know now, and you need to get this done. Okay, we have only a few weeks left of the semester. Um, but you should have been working on this for a while now. Okay. So again, 10-minute Zoom presentation. Um, the actual schedule is here, week 13. So go to schedule for presentations, and then you're gonna click at this link at the top too. And here you have everyone that's been signed up. So yeah, I signed up for yesterday just as a joke, and show that no one signed up for today or yesterday. But there's today, there's November 30th. Everyone needs to be at least signed up from November 30th on for there to be enough room. I even added an extra time slot at 11. Okay. If there's anyone that these time slots don't work out, you need to let me know. Okay. Um, I can extend them, I can work around them, but everyone needs to be presenting or they lose a chunk of their grade. Okay. But these are all the individuals that took up the days from the 7th on. Okay. Um, so just make sure that you do sign up. Okay. Please. All right. I had a few emails and they were asking what the presentation was about or what the paper was about. And I was a little disappointed. It's like, where have you been? Have you not been watching the recordings? Have you not been in this class? So please make sure that you get this done. Okay. You start. All right. So it's worth 100 points. Okay. It's worth another exam. So please make sure you get it done. All right. Enough of that. I'm going to lecture and then we are done for today. Well, I'll be talking a little bit about the assignments too that are due by the 30th. Um, Yeah, we'll just talk about it now. So you do have assignments that are extended till the 30th. You also have some other lab assignments. So I think you have a neuro lab that I have assigned. You're going to also be getting an assignment on Canvas. So there's a few assignments that I have just on Canvas, right? So I need you to understand that they're there, but you do have a nervous system, endocrine, blood, and cardiovascular questions, right? And they're going to kind of be incorporating all of these assignments. So make sure you get this done by the 30th, okay? But on Canvas, you will also have assignments too, okay? So um, there are a couple assignments that are just um, on Canvas. So let me see if there's one. Fermentation questions. Here, there's this here that a lot of people haven't completed. So this is just exam essay questions. So if you didn't know that this was, these were the 5 questions that were on exam 3. And you need to be able to finish this. Okay, so I opened it up again until November 28th. Should have been to the 30th. I think it's till the 30th. But you can access this and you could submit a file. Okay, so text box or file. So just make sure you answer these questions. You can get your points. Okay, but the next assignment is going to be like that. Okay, it's going to just be on Canvas. Okay, I think there's a couple of other. So the term paper submission is like that as well. Um, a little bit different. This is Turnitin. You just drop your paper into Turnitin and it'll accept. Okay. So those assignments are not through the McGraw-Hill Lab Connect. They are just um, on Canvas. Okay. So make sure you can access those. Um, I think there is translation homework as well. This one was also just on Canvas. Okay. So here, I'll open this one back up again. Yeah, you have extra time on this one as well if you didn't complete it. Okay, so the translation homework. I'll do it for, I think some people didn't do it. So you'll have extra time on that too. There's a couple of assignments that are back open again. Okay, so make sure you're doing that. Let me see. Oh, yeah. All right. Enough of that. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay. All right. Flowering plants. Okay. Chapter 28. So we've mentioned angiosperms a while ago, right? During when we talked about the evolution of plants, and we talked about how important angiosperms are. So if you don't remember, angiosperms are flowering plants, right? There's angiosperms, hymnosperms, bryophytes, and then we have ferns. Okay, and ferns and bryophytes are the more primitive of the land plants, again because they do have swimming gametes still, right? Angiosperms and hymnosperms, or like pines, are utilizing pollen rather than the swimming gametes. Okay, so remember the female and male. When I refer to the swimming gametes, are going to be the male swims to the female still. Okay, whereas in angiosperms and gymnosperms, they're going to be pollinated, right? So about 90% of humans' calories come from flowering plants, which is amazing, right? So we definitely have evolved to consume angiosperms. Okay, I think yeah, the majority of what we eat comes from angiosperms, which is amazing, right? If you think about it, coffee, which is probably not as many calories, but everyone has a cup of coffee in the morning usually, or a lot of people do. There's all the fruit, vegetables, grasses, right? So we have sugar cane, sugar beets, right? You might say, I don't eat vegetables at all. Well, I know you eat sugar. So sugar cane, um, beets, think about all the honey that is produced, right? The bees pollinate and pull the nectar from angiosperms. That doesn't occur with gymnosperms. So angiosperms are very, very important to humans, okay? Here are a couple of coffee beans or coffee fruit. So they're actually not beans, they're fruit. And the book kind of made a big distinction between the two. Um, right, we got legumes or like beans or actual um, things that are considered beans or nuts. But again, this is a coffee fruit. So they dry them out, and then they like bake them, and then you got your coffee, right? They look very different than what we typically see with that. Same thing with chocolate, right? Chocolate actually is a fruit as well, and then they remove the seeds out of the fruit, and then they dry, and then they sell the chocolate that way. But again, we definitely consume a lot of angiosperms for calories. Okay, so we utilize these plants, the fruit, um, the the root systems. We also utilize many of these plants for medicinal purposes, right? And many times these plants make various chemicals that allow protection from organisms from consuming the flesh, right? Caffeine is actually a defense mechanism of the plants or for the plant to prevent animals from consuming the tissue or the flesh, right? And this makes sense too. There's types of tobacco here as well that have high, very, very high concentrations of nicotine, right? So much so that you can't even utilize that for tobacco products. Okay, enough nicotine to kill a man, right? But same thing with these coffee or these coffee plants. So the fruit actually contains caffeine in order to prevent things from eating it, but enough caffeine or this plant has enough caffeine to kill a frog, okay, and to cause heart attacks in frogs. So it is definitely something that the plant can utilize in order to defend itself. We like coffee, right? We like caffeine. We also like nicotine. So again, these plants don't make the um, the chemicals because they're desirable. They for us, they make these chemicals in order for a protective mechanism. Okay. Um, so yeah, monocots and eudicots. So condyledon is the first leaf that appears on an embryo of a flowering plant. A seed leaf, a monocot embryo has one cotyledon. A eudicot embryos have two. So again, monodicot or monocot is a flowering plant whose embryos have a single seed leaf or a cotyledon. Eudicot members of a group consisting of a vast majority of flowering plants and have two cotyledons. So much more of the flowering plants are actually eudicots and monocots. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the differences for of the two. Okay, moving forward. So here's a nice little summary of each characteristics of monocots and eudicots. Okay, so again, there's not a lot of monodicots, but there's a lot of eudicots. So the majority of the flowering plants are eudicots. Okay. Um, so we have grasses, grains, orchids, and palms are found here. Okay, so one cotyledon. So this is one seed leaf that will penetrate through when the seed is actually ready to grow, right? So the veins are usually parallel, so which means they have straight veins within the leaf system or the plant. Vascular bundles are scattered in arrangement, so there's various different phloem and xylem. We'll talk about phloem and xylem in a minute. Pollen grain with one opening, okay, so one single hole in order for the fertilization. So this is a male gamete, right? And floral plants usually in multiples of three, okay? So 3, 6, 9, 12, right? A multiple of 3. So here we have 6 leaves. Fibrous root systems. So you'll have almost like hair-like root systems that extend outward and horizontally rather than deep and down. Okay. Eudicots, they are a little bit different. We have 2 cotyledons. So you have 2 leaf stems that are going to break out of that seedling. Veins are usually branched, which means they're more vascular, like an animal would be, right? So we have multiple vein sets. We don't have just veins that are in a single straight line. Vascular bundles are arranged in a ring, so they're a little more organized. So you see here the phloem and xylem. The tissue is going to be organized in a nice ring or circle. Pollen grain has 3 openings, right? 1, 2, and 3. You can't see it on the other side. Excuse me. Floral parts usually in multiples of 4 or 5. So either 4, 8, 12, whereas 5, 10, 15, 20, right? We have multiples of 4 or 5 rather than multiples of 3. And then we usually have taproot, which is going to be a root that goes straight down and it has extensions rather than the fibrous root, which almost looks like someone's head of hair turned upside down, right? Messy hair here. This is going to be a long root that's going to penetrate the ground, okay? All right, so root stems and leaves. So root system, all of a plant's roots which anchor it in the soil, absorb and transport minerals and water and store food, right? So the root system is something, again, that's going to be absorbing or pulling in water as well as nutrients and is not photosynthetic, right? So we can also use the root system for storage. So think of beets or potatoes or carrots, right? Those systems are the root system, or that those vegetables are associated with the root system. um, and again, we can use those organs for storage, okay? Whereas the upper part of the plant is going to be used for photosynthetic um, or photosynthesis, right? You're going to be making your food there. Um, so a system, all of a plant stems, leaves, and reproductive structure. So the vascular shoot system is going to be above ground. A root is the underground organ of a plant. Roots anchor the plant in the soil, absorb and transport minerals and water, and store food. Okay. A root hair is an outgrowth of an epidermal cell on a root, which increases a root's absorptive surface area. Okay, which is important. More surface area, the better. And we learned this from our GI tract, right? If you have more microvilli, you have more surface area, you're able to absorb more of the nutrient that's present in the gut, and in this case, in the ground, okay? So the structure of a flowering plant, right? We have a shoot system, which is going to be all the photosynthetic tissue above ground of the plant. And then we have a root system. And here we have a taproot that goes straight down. The root hairs are referring to the little projections from the root, right? So if you ever pulled a weed out of the ground and you look at the roots, you see that there's long, very thick pieces of root, but then you see these little appendages or little extensions from the larger roots, and they almost look like hairs, okay? And again, these root hairs are just increasing the surface area for more absorptive properties, right? To pick up more water, to pick up more nutrients and minerals from the ground, okay? Um, so that's important to note. Okay, so shoot system, everything above ground. Root system, everything below ground, okay? And we'll talk about these other things in a minute. So a root of a sugar beet stores carbohydrate. So here's a root system. You see here, we do have projections, and this appears to be a tap root, right? So you can see because it goes deep into the ground. Um, and again, this is a sugar beet, so it's storing sugar. And this is a majority of where we get our sugar from in the United States, right? We either get it from sugarcane or we get it from beet, okay? And we do have a lot of beets. So and here you see again the root projections with the hairs to increase the surface area for absorption. Um, the root buttresses are buttress roots from a canarium tree in Madagascar strengthen its trunk. So here we have the extension outward. These are very, very dense root systems. So buttresses, so have you ever seen the flying buttresses on the Roman or Gothic cathedrals? This is where they got the name, right? The extending buttresses from the plant. Okay, so stems. That part of a plant shoot system that generally grows above the ground and supports the leaves and reproductive structures. So we have a node. This is the point of attachment of a leaf on a stem. Terminal bud, embryonic tissue at the tip of a shoot made up of developing leaves uh, uh, and a compact series of nodes um, and internodes. Axillary bud. This is an embryonic shoot present in the angle formed by a leaf and stem. Apical dominance. This is in a plant, the hormonal inhibition of axillary buds by terminal bud. And we'll talk about apical dominance and the apical meristem and what that means. Okay. I think there's a couple of figures in a minute, and I'll kind of explain or walk you through that. Rhizome. This is the horizontal stem that grows below the ground. And then you get a tuber and enlargement at the end of the rhizome in which food is stored. Okay. So we've seen tubers before, and you'll see that in a minute. Okay, so apical dominant. So here we have a terminal bud. What this terminal bud does is it actually is going to be a new extension of the shoot system, right? It's going to be a new extension of that stem. Okay, so my mom did like to grow bushes, and I remember she wanted a very bushy bush in front of the house. Okay, and what she needed to do, and she told me she needed to smash or kill the tops, or she called them the babies, okay, of the plant. And she said these babies are going to be extensions of and lengthen the plant rather than make it bushy. Okay. And what she was referring to was this terminal bud here. But what she didn't know, they weren't really the babies. They were just new growths to that plant that were going to extend upward to the horizontally rather than extend and get bushier, right? And she wanted the plant to get bushy. She wanted the plant to grow more projections out here. And for all intents and purposes for that plant, this is probably inefficient, right? You don't want to grow outward because again, you're going to be stopping a lot of sun from hitting the photosynthetic tissues that are found here, right? You'd rather grow higher than short and fat because again, if you grow short and bushy, you're going to limit the amount of sun that you're able to it's able to gather, right? And this is again because if you grow too many leaves here, it's going to take up too much surface area. You might not absorb enough sunlight. Whereas if you grow tall, the different areas of the plant will be bathed in sun. Therefore, you have a more likelihood of achieving more efficient photosynthetic outcomes, right? So you're going to get more sugar that way. So, but what she would do was she would train the plant and she would squish this terminal bud. And what she would do, she would literally go and smash this terminal bud, preventing the plant from growing tall, preventing the plant from growing upward because she wanted a bushier plant. So what happens when you smash a terminal bud is you signal this plant hormonally to start growing or forming another terminal bud, but it will form elsewhere. It'll start at another location where the plant can grow outward and then up, outward and then up. But what she would do was when this plant grew outward or high enough, she would smash the terminal bud again. So then it would have to grow from a different projection. It would have to start a new stem. Okay. So, and what happens here when you remove a terminal bud is you get this bushy growth rather than the length or the tall growth that we see here. Okay. And so she would do this and she would train the plant. And again, she would do this because she would remove or smash the terminal bud. Um, so this rosemary plant has been pruned, or essentially the terminal bud has been clipped, which decreases the apical dominance and increases branching and leaf production. The result is an increase in the useful yields of the leaves. Okay, and again, this is to increase the photosynthetic capability of those plants. Okay, so here we have a root and a rhizome, which is going to be a horizontal extension of that root system. Okay, and then we have tubers here. So a tuber is, think of a potato or a yam or a sweet potato or a carrot, right? This is going to be a storage unit of the plant. And we like storage units, right? So how do plants store their sugar? We store our sugar in complex polysaccharides called glycogen in our liver and our muscles, right? We talked about that before, but we know what plants store their sugar in, and it's called starch, okay? And so guess what? Potatoes have a high concentration of starch. So these are storage molecules, right? So think about this. The plant above um, is photosynthetic, okay, but it can store a lot of the excess calories in the bottom of the plant in starch, okay. It can store that in a potato or um, one of these tubers, okay. So starch again, potatoes, storage, right? These tubers here, okay. Leaves. So a leaf, the main. Oh, what's a typo? Very sorry. Main site of photosynthesis in a plant consists of a blade that is typically flattened and a stalk that joins the leaf system. A blade is a flattened portion of the leaf. This is where the majority of the photosynthesis occurs. And then a petal. This is the stalk of a leaf which joins the leaf to a node of a stem. So petal. So we have different arrangements of leaves. We have a simple leaf and we have a compound leaf, okay? Um, so here we have the axillary bud, and then we have the petal, which again binds or houses the attachment site between the leaf and the stem. So a simple leaf has a single undivided blade. Some simple leaves are deeply lobed, as shown here, okay? A compound leaf has multiple individual leaf extensions from that single petal, okay? So we have a leaflet, and then this makes up again the single leaf that extends from that stem. Okay, so compound leaf, the blade consists of multiple leaflets. A leaflet has no axillary bud at its base. In some plants, each leaflet is further divided into smaller leaflets. Okay, which is shown here. Compound leaf versus simple leaf. One single giant leaf versus multiple leaves extending from one single bud. Okay. We also have modified leaves. So we have tendrils of a gourd plant. Okay. So we do have vines or gourd plants that have these special leaves for adhering, right? So they would grow up into a wire system or on a fence that you'll typically see. And you see this with gourds. You also see this with other types of fruits. Um, my grandma had these special like squashes. In Spanish, they're called chayotes, and they're like those big. They look like big green pears, but they're not. She would put them in soups and other dishes like that. But they had the same type of leaves. They would grow up on this wall or this fence, and they would wrap around. And she would actually help wrap the plant around different areas of this wire fence that she had in order for the fruit to hang down. Okay, and these are huge fruits. They're huge spiny fruits. They were pretty good actually, but more like a squash. They're not. They look like pears, but they're not. But they had these same kind of modified leaves, and these leaves are used for holding the vine or plant to some sort of structure. Okay. Another modified leaf is actually cactus spines. Okay. So these cactus spines are actually modified leaves. The photosynthetic tissue is actually beneath the cactus, right? We also talked about cactus being important because they can limit or decide when to perform light reactions and the dark reactions. So remember that we talked about, I believe CD4 plants mentioned before. So it can perform all the light reactions throughout the day, but never open up the stomata to perform the dark reactions. Okay, this is because cacti usually are inhabiting areas that are incredibly dry. But we'll look at the leaf structure in a minute, and I'll kind of walk you through the differences between these cactus or cacti and other types of plants that perform the light and dark reactions at the same time. Okay. Plant tissues and tissue systems, we have xylem. This is a portion of a plant's vascular system that provides support and conveys water and inorganic nutrients from the roots to the rest of the plant. Xylem consists mainly of vessel elements and or tracheids, water conducting cells. Okay. Phloem, the portion of a plant's vascular system that conveys sugars, nutrients, and hormones throughout a plant. Phloem is made up of live food conducting cells. Okay. So these are the two differences. What I like to think about these these two different types of tubes or different types of transport structures. Xylem is going to be more general, water, plumbing. Uh, um, Phloem is, think of it as a transport of almost like blood. Okay, so this is almost going to be like the circulatory system of the plant. Okay, phloem, and it's going to carry sugar. It's going to carry hormones. It's going to carry uh, much more the important high calorie, high value molecules for the plant. Whereas xylem is going to be a very general tissue that's going to carry large amounts of water to the upper portions of that plant. Okay, so you have dermal tissue in plants. Oops. This is the tissue system that forms an outer protective covering. Okay, which we'll see in a minute. Cuticle, this is a waxy coating on the surface of stems and leaves that helps retain water. Vascular tissue system is a system formed by xylem and phloem throughout a plant, which we'll see a couple of different ones right now, serving as a long distance transport system for water and nutrients respectively. Okay, so we have ground tissue system. This is a tissue that makes up the bulk of a plant, filling the space between the epidermis and the vascular tissue system. The ground tissue system fulfills a variety of functions, including storage, photosynthesis, and support. We'll see this right now. Pith implants ground tissue that is internal to the vascular tissue in a eudicot stem. A cortex, ground tissue between the vascular tissue and dermal tissue, and root or eudicot system. So this is going to be kind of annoying because I'm reading you these definitions, but I wanted to provide you these before you actually see them. Okay, so here we have xylem. So xylem is going to be typically in the middle, and you'll see this with trees. The woody portion of trees, the xylem, you will see is right in the middle. Okay, even the wood of a tree typically has um, the xylem housed there. That's where the majority of the water is passed through. Phloem again is the sugar and other types of precious nutrient will be just on the outside. Again, phloem and xylem are usually closely associated with each other in plants. Okay, so the vascular tissue is going to be very close together. Xylem again mainly for water. Phloem, think sugar. Okay. Endodermis again is the inside. This is going to be referring to the tissues inside of the cell. Whereas the epidermis of plants, think of bark or cork that is going to be growing outward. Think of the epidermis on our tissue, right? It's going to be a lot of dead cells that's going to be protecting us from the outside environment. We also have the cortex here. Okay, and this is going to be that main space or chunk of tissue that's found. All right, so leaf structure. So stoma, this is the pore surrounded by guard cells in the epidermis of a leaf. When stomata are open, CO2 enters a leaf and water and O2 exit a plant. A plant conserves water when the stomata is closed. And this is what I was talking about with the cactus or the cacti. Okay. Remember, cactus or cacti can perform the light and dark reactions of photosynthesis at different times, right? The dark reactions occur at night, whereas the light reactions occur during the day. This is not true during all of the plants or for all plants, right? Some plants will do both simultaneously. Okay, so guard cell, this is a specialized epidermal cell in plants that regulates the size of the stomata, allowing gas exchange between the surrounding air and the photosynthetic cells of the leaf. Mesophyll, the green tissue in an interior of a leaf's ground tissue system of the main site of photosynthesis. Okay, so that mesophyll is that middle tissue between the epidermal tissue and the internal structure. Okay, so that mesophyll, right, the internal structure shown here, this is where you have all the photosynthetic cells. So you see the cells at the mesophyll or in the mesophyll, you see they have little green pockets, and that is going to be on the photosynthetic sites, right? That's going to be the chlorophyll. Okay, you have the cuticle or that waxy cell coating. You also have stomata shown here with guard cells. Okay, so stomata, the opening with guard cells, right? And then xylem in the middle and phloem on the outside. Okay, so phloem, phloem transporting sugar, and then xylem. Think of this as the vascular system, so the vein, right? So remember we talked about regulation of the dark and light reactions of photosynthesis, right? So remember, photosystem 1 and 2 is utilizing the light reactions, right? Photosystem 1 produces energy or ATP for sugar or energy production later on. And then photosystem 2 provides that NADPH, right? NADPH is reducing power that will be used in the dark reactions to fix carbon dioxide from the environment to sugars, right? We can fix CO2 into a 6 carbon sugar called glucose, right? So in order to fix that, we need the stomata open. So we need CO2 to come into the cell or the leaf, and then we need to be able to have that energy from the photosystems in order to uh, uh, follow through with the dark reactions and actually make sugar. Okay. Well, in cactus or cacti, think about the areas where they inhibit. They're very dry, very hot environments where you typically don't have a lot of water. All right. So it's important for those plants or those cactus to not have uh, desiccation occur in their tissue. So if the stomata are open, remember what happens: CO2 comes in, oxygen and water leave. Okay, um, so if there's not a lot of water in your environment, plants do need water. You need to be able to regulate or limit the amount of water loss. So what cactus can do or cacti can do is actually close the stomata off during the day. These cells can gain their energy right through photosynthesis, but they're not going to off gas the oxygen. They're not going to release oxygen and water through their pores. They're going to wait for the day for the night. Then they're going to open up the stomata once the temperature reaches a certain degree, and there's no more sun. And also in a desert, think about it's really hot days and cold nights. Okay, so this will limit the amount of evaporation that can occur from the stomata. Therefore, the off-gassing, the exchange of oxygen out and CO2 in for the carbon fixation can be a little more efficient without losing that much water. Okay, so the stomata plays a vital role, especially in cacti. Whereas plants here, there's a lot of grasses, there's a lot of like bamboo grows very quickly, right? The stomata is open, full blown photosynthesis, light and dark reactions are occurring at the same time. Okay. Um, and it's important to note that, right? There are plants, there are different grasses and different other types of trees that grow very quickly and can perform light and dark reactions at the same time. Cactus or cacti are that very special kind of organism that will not, or the very special kind of plant that will not perform them at the same time due to the environments that they live in. Okay. And this goes for probably most of the desert plants. I'm not too familiar with the desert ecology or desert flora and fauna, but I'm almost positive majority of plants in the desert environment do perform that or do that. And again, this makes sense because a lot of the desert plants do not grow very quickly. Okay. All right. So plant cells. We have a chloroplast, an organelle found in plants, and photosynthetic protists, enclosed by two members, or it's enclosed by two membranes, rather. Sorry. A chloroplast absorbs sunlight and uses it to power the synthesis of organic food molecules, sugar. Central vacuole, a membrane enclosed sac occupying most of the interior of a mature cell, or a mature plant cell, having diverse roles in reproduction, growth, and development. Cell wall is a productive layer external to the plasma membrane in plant cells. Bacteria, fungi, and some proteins protects the cell and helps maintain its shape. Okay, so here are a couple of things in the plant cell. We know or we've seen diagrams of the animal cell with the mitochondria, the Golgi, the ribosomes, the microtubules. The main difference between animal cells and plant cells is a cell wall. The cell wall is important or crucial for the cell and prevention of rupturing, right? So I think we've talked a bit briefly about this when we went over the working parts of the cell, but this allows or prevents the tissues from rupturing. Remember, our cells do not have cell walls. Therefore, I think I talked about drowning in a freshwater pool versus saltwater or a saltwater pool or the ocean, right? Our lung tissue can actually rupture if we drown in a freshwater pool. So therefore, it's more dangerous. We actually can pop our cells. Well, plants are in constant state of high osmotic pressure. They want to have high osmotic pressure because it causes the turgidity or the turgidity of the plant. So it allows a plant to stand straight up. Okay. The more water pressure, the better off they are. But they need a protective mechanism in order to prevent that cell from rupturing from that osmotic pressure, right? because the membrane essentially can rupture once the dissolved solutes become higher than the external environment. The water rushes in, and then boom, the cell will pop. But the cell wall prevents the cell from rupturing. Okay, prevents this vacuole from being full and then causing the cell to eventually pop. Okay, um, we do have chloroplasts too that are also different. Remember, light and dark reactions, photosynthesis. This is actually carbon fixate. They do have mitochondria, right? Because the energy made in photosystem one is used in the dark reactions. Okay, that was one of the test questions on, I think, exam two. Yeah, exactly. I think it was exam two, right? So plant cells do have both mitochondria and chloroplast, but mitochondria break down glucose. Plants still need glucose, right? They make glucose, they make excess amounts of glucose, um, but the mitochondria are still where the plants receive the majority of their ATP from. The ATP created in photosystem one is for the chloroplast, and it's for fixing carbon dioxide, right? ATP is used to fix carbon dioxide in the chloroplast. It never leaves. Okay. Breaking down or making energy for the cell is still the mitochondria's job. Okay. It's all the cellular functions that occur out here are made, the energy is made from the mitochondria or through glycolysis. Whereas the chloroplast, it conserves all of the energy from photosystem one for the dark reactions. Okay. Big distinction there, right? That was the correct answer on the exam. Okay. Um, Central vacuoles, right? This is going to be used for water storage and the turgidity. It's going to help with the turgidity of the cell. Okay, so this is going to be the water storage. It's also going to be the majority of the space in that cell. And again, it allows for the turgidity, allows for those cells or those stems and leaves to stand straight. Okay, and that's another thing that's different from animal cells. So chloroplast, central vacuole, and cell wall. Excuse me. These are going to be the main three differences between plant cells and animal cells. So plant growth, we have annual, biennial, and perennial plants. Okay, so annual plants are plants that complete their life cycle in a year. Biennial are a plant that completes its life cycle in 2 years. And perennial, a plant that lives for more for many years. Okay. Um, Oh yeah, like trees are perennials. Annuals are certain types of grasses or shrubs that dry and then grow, dry and grow. The annuals are think of those grasses that you see on the foothills when you drive out somewhere, right? When you get out of town or you see out in the grass or the fields that are not that haven't been disked, uh, and you see that they're dry and they're dead. Those types of grasses are annuals, right? So they'll grow, they'll drop the seed once they die, and then when water comes or there's a favorable condition, those seeds will germinate, and then you have the grasses again, once again, right? Those are also the fire hazard plants. Okay, think of the perennials as the oak trees or large flowering plants that live for many years. Okay, annuals like rice live just for one growing season. Biennials, so we have wild chevrolet, also cow parsley, which I really don't know too much about, but these grow or they only live for 2 years or two growing seasons. Perennials live for many growing seasons, so like a rose bush, okay, or a tree, okay. Primary growth, we have lengthening. So we have the apical meristem. So meristem is a plant tissue consisting of undifferentiated cells that divide and generate new cells and tissues. So an apical meristem is what we talked about clipping, or I talked about my mom smashing so that the organism or the plant can grow outward instead of up, right? A meristem is at the tip of a plant root or in the terminal or axillary bud of a shoot. So there's both the stem found in the root as well as the tip of the axillary bud, right? Primary growth, this is growth in the length of a plant root or shoot produced by an apical meristem. So again, we have a terminal bud, which are apical meristems, and you can clip these and it'll grow outward, right? We have apical meristems down here as well. Okay, so this is going to be the extension of that root system, and this is a tap root. So if you clip here, you'll have another projection that grows outward here. So it'll look more like a filamentous growth rather than the length of the tap root. Okay, so close up of a primary growth of the root tip. So here we have the apical meristem. Again, if you clip the root, you'll have another projection coming out somewhere else. Again, this is going to be the same as if you clip the apical meristem at the top of the plant. You're going to have another projection that comes out here. Okay. All right. Secondary growth or thickening. So an increase in a plant's girth involving cells, cell division in the vascular cambium and cork cambium. Wood is secondary xylem of a plant. Vascular cambium in plants a cylinder of meristem tissue found between the primary xylem and phloem. During secondary growth, the vascular cambium produces secondary xylem and phloem. Okay, so we have trees such as oak that thicken from year to year due to secondary growth. Okay, so think of these thickening or the growth, the extra girth of the tree as the rings of a tree, right? There are many people that will cut a tree down and they can date the tree and how old the tree is. And the thickening is actually yearly, so you'll have one ring per season, right? And you can definitely date the tree that way. Okay. And sometimes the rings are very, very small, very, very tiny, depending on how fast that tree grows. Okay. This is kind of showing you the secondary growth of a wood stem, right? And this is after a summer or normal season. So the branches of most woody plants are made up of tissue of varying ages. The youngest regions near the tip, and the older regions near the trunk. Okay. The cross section at the left shows a region of the stem that is just beginning to grow. So year one, early spring. Again, you see this dicot, right? This is dicot because a dicot, a eudicot, sorry, because you have organized phloem and xylem, right? So we have the xylem and the phloem, and then we have the epidermis, the cortex, and we have this as almost like a soft, leafy texture, right? It's not going to be wood yet. So late year one and late summer, we have secondary xylem or wood, and this is typically the stuff we prune off when we go and prune before winter. Okay. So, but now you're starting to form the cork cambium and the cork. So the cork is going to be like that epidermis tissue that makes up bark. Okay. So think of this as epidermal tissue on our skin. It's going to be dead skin cells that come from the cortex. Okay. That extend from the cortex. So here we have late summer year two. We definitely have full wood growth. We have development in the phloem and the xylem. Okay. It's thickening, and that cortex is actually running out. So now we're starting to develop the true bark, the true vascular tissue, and the true strength is coming in for that wood. Okay. So anatomy of a tree trunk. On the left, you see a cross section of a locust trunk. This tree is several decades old, and you can tell by the different additions or the annual rings that you see. You also see that the phloem and xylem are going to be found at the distal layer around just before the cork cambium. So we have the vascular cambium just underneath the cork cambium. And this is interesting too, because you can definitely kill a tree by cutting a few inches into the bark and removing this layer. Okay. So I've heard of a couple of issues like this happen where individuals kill trees because they don't like how the trees are growing in their neighbor's yard. And what they do is they actually cut. They don't get any ideas from this. They'll actually cut a ring around the base of that tree, just deep enough to limit the vascular tissue. Okay, because the central tissue, the heartwood, is pretty. It doesn't really convey too much moisture or nutrient, right? The majority of the sugar and the phloem and the xylem are going to be found in these in the vascular cambium here. Okay, so this is where the phloem and the xylem are held, right? Where it can be an issue, right? If someone were to come in and essentially cut a chunk of this out, just take either a really sharp knife and start cutting into the wood, and you cut just beneath it, and you start removing or cutting a line in the tissue, you essentially cut off the water and the sugar from the root system. Okay. And this is how you can essentially kill a tree. Not only that, you can introduce infections into this area of the tissue as well. So I have seen this before where individuals will cut into a tree in order to kill the tree. And sometimes you'll see like, well, I wonder why that tree just randomly died. Usually it's no one's harming trees, but sometimes it can be that weird event where the neighbor gets mad and wants to kill the tree, right? They'll come in and take a sharp knife and essentially cut around the tree and remove this vascular tissue. Okay. All right. That is it for today. So I will not be talking on chapter 29. So this is the last information that you'll see for your exam next week. Okay. So we will have a review on Monday, and then I'll assign the exam. Um, but this will be the last information on your last exam. Okay, and then you'll have the final. Um, but I will not lecture on chapter 28. I feel like this is enough plant. There's still another part of this chapter that I need to cover as well, but that'll be for your next exam. Okay, because it's just too much information to put on this exam. You're already getting plants, and the majority of this exam is made up of immune system and kidney, neurological, sexual reproduction. So that's enough information there. But yeah, for your next exam, it'll definitely be just this information and from the chapters that we got into the body systems. But no chapter 29. So I'm going to go back and lecture on chapters 18 and 19, I believe, which are going to be evolution and ecology, or I think it's just ecology. One second. Yeah, ecology and population ecology. Okay, so I'll be lecturing on those. We're going to skip chapter 29, which is the working plant. I think you'll get enough plant material there. So yeah. Also, we'll have office hours at 11:30. So in another 30 minutes, I'll be sending a link out. I guess it'll be too late because the recording probably won't be up by then. So this is just for you, Lucia, if you want to come to office hours. Any questions, Lucia, since you're the only one here today? All right, sounds good. Make sure you are scheduled for your presentation and make sure your paper is getting done, okay? And that goes for everybody, not just Lucia. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone, or enjoy your Thanksgiving.